Okay, here we are with lesson three of the journey, focused on goals, habits, and fulfillment. What a great American topic to talk about goals and success and achievement. But we're going to take a deeper look at not only current culture and modern science and what the concepts are in modern day, but also look at a secular worldview from the past thousands of years. So a more historical view. We're going to look at the scientific view, and then we're going to look at the biblical overlay or underlay, I should say, of all these things to keep our mind and our heads straight and focused on the ultimate goal of heaven while also enjoying the journey even through the struggle of it. There's a reason we called this the journey is because man, there's highs, there's lows, there's mountaintops, there's valleys, and we like to really enjoy the mountaintops. That's a good thing. But we also like for the lows to not necessarily just knock us out or lead to terrible decisions like suicide or taking one's life. There's really difficult consequences that can come out of a wrong view of achievement and success, and then tying that into identity, which we went through last lesson. So there's a lot to talk through here. We're going to spend more time on the exercises portion, but we're going to spend enough time here to really to untie some of these subjects. So I'm here with Titus and Jeff and Joanna, and as necessary, we'll have discussion as we wrestle through these as well, but read through the guide initially. So here we go. Teach us to number our days so that we may gain a heart of wisdom. From Psalm 90, verse 12. We always put a passage there to kind of tie the concept right away at the beginning. We're not going to live forever. Our journey is the journey we're talking about right now is our journey in life for the context of this conversation. So, why do we set goals? And why are we going to set goals even in this community as Christians? Because every human being is moving towards something intentionally or by drift. And the direction of your life isn't determined by desire alone, but by what you decide and repeatedly do, even outside of motivation and desire, which is very fickle, day to day, hour to hour, minute to minute. So we don't rely on motivation. Rely on environment and community and structure and planning that has been well thought through. And it's a modern conception that, or a common misconception that if I stay at rest, so let's take physics for example. So an object in motion stays in motion. That's true. But an object at rest stays at rest. That's not necessarily true for a human. And so we're an active being. There's constantly things happening. Your heart never stops beating from the moment you are in the womb and the heart starts beating in the womb to death. This thing is always moving. This muscle is always going. So you are always in motion. And if you're sitting there doing nothing, there is a lot happening underneath the surface. So we want to kind of wrangle that and be intentional about everything that's happening, focus and input and goal setting. So let's take a look. Any extra layering that we want to add? We're going to get into lots of conversation from taking these three views, but leave some space.
I'll just add quickly that it's a very biblical concept too. I mean, you think of Revelation, uh, Jesus is giving his seven words, his seven letters as the angels go out to these different churches, and one of them receives the message that you are lukewarm, and this is a very bad thing. Um, and because his implication is you're just kind of sitting in the middle, you're Christian, but you just don't really care. And I hate that. I hate that. And that's just one, just him in a judgment way saying it. But in another place, Jesus is just like, you're either for me or you're against me. There's no in between. And speaking to what Amos is saying, you're moving in one direction or another. Which direction is it? And Jesus, in the same way, wants us to think about this. Are you following me or are you rejecting me? There's no in between. So just a powerful concept that goes right into Jesus' own words.
Mm. And if we're not following Jesus, the devil never stops either. So there's an object in motion, an individual in motion that never stops influencing you and shaping you. So we have to choose where we where we follow, where we go. Uh, okay, so secular historical perspective. Let's dive in. Let's go to Aristotle, very, very common philosopher that we know of. His virtue ethics, core concept there, habits form character, and character forms destiny. Stoicism, common movement of being, having not necessarily the super high highs or the super low lows, but being very just one direction in life. You're not too emotional about anything. Focus only on what you can control. Discipline your mind and your actions. Just take control over everything, basically. It's a lot on you. Benjamin Franklin's Virtue Journal, daily tracking of habits produced measurable growth in moral character. There's just a simple test you can do. If I track my habits towards a goal, there will be growth towards that goal. Goal setting theory, clear, measurable, and challenging goals improve motivation and results. So a lot of actions taken towards a certain direction is going to improve results, like practice for sports is an example of that. And it's fun to get better at things. Golf, for example, I'm playing golf right now. It's very frustrating when I'm very terrible at golf. But if I hit a good shot and I can feel that progress happening, I'm getting closer to as good as my siblings, then that is exciting to me, and I want to do more and more of it. So it's a concept called flow. Fulfillment comes when challenge meets skill. You lose yourself in meaningful work. There's a concept of fulfillment, that fulfillment doesn't only come from achieving something, but it's in the journey towards what you are working towards. Very fulfilling to grow in a skill and to take on bigger and bigger challenges that require more and more skill. Feel free to pause me if you need to. Yep.
Yeah, quick comment. First, I want you to say the name of that person who you have quoted for the flow. That's my first challenge. I have
Six cents in the
no.
holly.
Yeah, that's an impressive name. Anyway, I just thought that was funny. There's a lot of people that uh talk about flow, especially when it comes to work. Like this is a way, I mean, people who love things, like let's say you love snowboarding. They'll talk about flow, like when you're in the middle of it and you're just good at it, you can just coast and fly and jump as if it's nothing. Like your skill and your desire, they're all matching. And it's a beautiful thing. Or someone who's just a really good blacksmith can get in the flow of just doing his craft because he's so good at it. And it just, the body mechanics and the mental skill are so connected because you've mastered that. So I would say flow is just something that, people long for. Where do I feel it? And sometimes people use that to help decide where am I going to go in life. And Joanna talked about this last time we were talking about identity, but kind of thinking like, what should I do with my life when you're in high school? That question that's so struggling, like, what am I going to be? And you almost put so much pressure on because you're trying to figure out what am I going to have flow in? And maybe where have I tasted that? But that's such a hard gauge because by the time you're in high school, there's a lot of things you haven't even experienced yet. And to limit yourself, maybe to short circuit that a little bit. But I appreciate the concept being here because I've experienced that in certain moments. I would say that sometimes when I'm sermon writing, I'm in a flow. Like it just gushes out. I've read my text, I've studied it, and I'm just doing my own self-reflection and then I just start writing and it's boom. And I've done that with like longer form writing too. It's cool when you hit flow. But every writer and every pastor will tell you this. Writing does not always feel that way. And being a pastor does not always feel that way. So if you're just like in this pursuit of flow, like that's what gives me fulfillment. I'm just trying to get to that. If that's the only thing that you're seeking for fulfillment, you're going to be sorely disappointed in life. And no matter what profession you go in, because even if you love your job and you love what you're doing, or you get to do what you love as your job, there are going to be times, a significant portion of that it's going to be the grind, just the daily do it because you have to. Same thing with roles, like being a dad, being a husband. It's not always easy. It doesn't always feel like a flow state. Sometimes it's just doing what you need to do to show love. Uh, so just as I was seeing all these comments, like you bridge these all together, like Aristotle's talking about habits. So he's just saying, do the little thing and then it'll become more normal. It'll become more natural. Same thing with Benjamin Franklin's virtue journal. And the goal setting is saying, like, this is what I want it to be. I want it to be easy, but in the meantime, it might be really terrible. So I set the goal so I know that someday I want to be a master at this and I'll be good at this. And but you have to set that goal so you have that little bit of future dopamine to come. And then the flow is like, yes, I want pieces of that. I want that more often, but be realistic about it that it's never going to be a constant. Even if someone's spent 10,000 hours becoming a master of something, they're still going to have a lot of grind moments. And I think anyone who's really mastered a skill will tell you that that's just part of the deal. Is there's good and the bad, and you push yourself through the hard times to get maybe more of that flow. Now, all of that's, I'm just speaking from the secular side because there's so much more as a Christian. But man, does this conversation fit with being a Christian? Sometimes it flows, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes you want to go to church, sometimes you don't want to go to church. Sometimes you read the Bible and it just speaks to you and you're like, yes, this is awesome. It's so cool. Other times you read it and you're like, man, can this chapter get over any faster? Because I got other things to go thing. I have no idea what it's talking about. This is doing nothing for me. So like it's the exact same with your Christian walk. You're going to have easy times, you're going to have hard times. You're going to have easy truth, you're going to have hard truth. Um, so it's understanding there's a balance here. You want some of that flow, but you're also the discipline helps you get through the hard times and to get that time and effort in, even if it's not easy. So
Right. Yeah, you bring up a good concept with the goal of if you have a goal or if you see success as easiness, ease in life, you're going to be sorely disappointed, and it's the wrong goal because we know as a principle that life is not going to be easy. Where do we get that from? Well, secular um, information, but also from the Bible. We know life is going to be difficult. That's why we have underground. That's why we have the journey together. You go ahead, Jeff.
Oh, please continue.
That's it. I just wanted to draw that one out at least.
Cool. So I have a couple other thoughts that I just want to add in here. I don't know how they'll fit in with the flow of the rudder, or the pun, the flow of what we've been talking about. But there's two terms or two things that I've kind of learned recently. So one of them is a principle called Price's Law. And so I don't know if anybody knows what that is, but essentially what Price's Law is a concept that 50% of the work or 50% of the content or output of anything will come down to the square root of the number of people or the number of things contributing. So how I like to look at it is, say we live for 100 years. That means we have 36,524 days in that lifespan of 100 years. And Price's Law would say that 50% of the growth, 50% development, 50% of the big, meaningful, impactful moments that we've had comes down to about 192 days out of those moments. If we were to follow that thought process. And I thought that was kind of really impactful for me as far as just thinking about what are those big turning stone moments in my life, or what are those big goals and those big accomplishments, as far as thinking about, oh, I'm not in the flow right now, or I'm not in this state here. Like we'll have those big moments, but we'll also have those. I bet we look back in our lives, we can think about, okay, where have those moments occurred in our life? And if that principle holds true, based on where we are in our life and based on how many moments and how many days we live, how can we try to increase that number as far as getting the most out of life, actually focusing on a goal, developing skills. The other concept that I've recently learned kind of ties into this as far as flow, um, kind of going about that perfect ideal of heaven, like the Satan center concept, we're both a Satan center. There's a concept I recently learned as far as gap and gain. The idea being that when we measure our goals or we look at things, that we should not be so focused on what we have left to achieve or where we've missed out or be in that negative, but kind of focus backwards towards, okay, what have we accomplished over the past 90 days? Or where have we grown? Which I think scripturally ties in really well. That if we get so caught up in the secular world of what we want to gain or what we want to achieve, and we're not focused on the gain that is Christ dying for our sins and that we've already gained everything. like when we don't have that game focus is where we could come into trouble with these.
Yeah, that's good. Always being thankful, looking back, seeing what you've gained as a way to almost get you to, you know what, we can do this again. There's something else that I can work for because I've gained all these things and I'm capable of more. And the devotions today too, from the Advent devotions from MLC, it talked about what we're willing to go through in order to achieve a reward. You know, if there is a reward or if there is a goal that's big enough, we're willing to do things that we otherwise would not do on a regular daily basis. So with heaven being a goal, we're willing to live as a Christian and potentially be persecuted and die. And we would be willing to die for our faith because the goal and the reward is so much more valuable. I'd be willing to do that. I'd be willing to do the hardest thing ever, just sacrificing my life or sacrificing myself for someone else. Same thing with small goals. You know, if we set out a goal, it will change the way that we act and behave. And that's what we want to leverage in our life and in this conversation. Okay, let's move on. So let's look at just the brain, neuroscience and psychology of change. We have the basal ganglia and habit loops. Once a behavior becomes routine, the brain automates it, conserving energy. This doesn't mean that's just for good habits. That's often for poor habits. 66-day habit formation rule. There's difference in days. That's why on average, this states that it takes 66 days for a new behavior to become automatic. So the brain almost switches on average at 66 days. Like, we got to find efficiencies because obviously this person cares about this and we're getting the dopamine and the reward. This is something that we're going to have more of. Dopamine and motivation. So speaking of, dopamine spikes in anticipation of reward, not just the achievement. And this drives progress. This is speaking to kind of the fulfillment coming from the journey, skill meeting challenge in the process, small steps towards a larger goal. There's a lot of reward happening in that process that we actually miss out on when we just give ourselves everything we want with no time between wanting it and having it. And that's the law of depreciation or law of, you know, when you have like 6 burgers, the 6th burger doesn't taste as good. That's the concept. But law of depreciation, where I am not going to enjoy the interaction with a woman over text where all of a sudden we're like, oh yeah, we want to get together, we want to have a date, but there was no flirting, there was no chasing, there was no thought and effort that had to go into it. That's not going to be a strong relationship. So enjoy the journey, enjoy the progress. Willpower fatigue. Well, I'll say one more thing about this. People are let down about this, where it's like, if I have achievement and success and all the money and all the things I could ever want, then I will be happy. Or I have this bucket list, and when I check everything off this bucket list, then I will be happy. Well, some people do achieve all those things, and on the other side, they're not happy. There's a huge letdown because they have a wrong assumption about where success comes from and what it's going to feel like. Willpower fatigue. Decision making depletes mental energy. Habits preserve it. So habits protect us from our motivation and our energy levels. And then identity-based change. Habits last longer when tied to who you are rather than what you want. So we talk about identity. I am disciplined versus I want to be disciplined. It shifts when you see yourself a certain way. You behave a certain way because you've identified that way. So again, these are neuroscience and psychology of change. We'll take a look at biblical perspective here as well. But if there's any layering that either of you want to do here.
I will add that, again, referencing Andrew Huberman, because he talks a lot about the willpower fatigue. Well, and it happens in Atomic Habits too, but he talks about you want to automate as many things as possible, so you have to use less willpower every day. Now, what he doesn't mean is like you're doing this to make yourself lazier. Like, you can just go through life and you don't have to be active. You don't have to be intentional. His point is, the more things that you can automate frees up your willpower to do new things or something different. or something that's harder. But don't waste all your willpower on all of these little things that you can do by simple discipline or simple routine. And I just thought that was a really good concept. I've really implemented that in my life. This could be simply by going to bed earlier so you can get up earlier. Like if I set those clocks and do that, it's going to give me more energy. It's going to teach my brain I get up at 5 o'clock every day so it's ready to go. And if I just automate that process, it's going to make it easier for me at 5:30 to read my Bible because my brain is already prepared for it. So then that 5:30 Bible reading is going to be a lot easier over time. So certain things like, or this is one of my favorite examples. So let's say you don't like working out, especially in the morning. One of the hacks that he had for that was he's like, so part of the hard part is, there's a lot of willpower to get out of bed by itself. Like just getting out of bed early in the morning is hard. On top of that, you have to get out of bed to work out. You kidding me? And your brain is just like fighting you. It's coming up with 1,000 reasons why you should be getting more sleep. You're going to be so tired after you're done with your workout. It's going to ruin the rest of your day. Like blah, 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 blah. You come up with all these things. So he's like, why don't you just like bypass that whole thing? So he's like, here's maybe a way to fight your brain on that. It's like before you go to bed, put your workout clothes on and have everything ready for the workout. So it will like your shame. His way of saying is like your shame of not getting up and working out. And then let's say you don't get up and work out, then you stand up and you're wearing your workout clothes and you have to take them off to put your regular clothes on. Like he's saying that is like an opposite way of fighting that willpower where it makes it easier because the easier option choice in that situation is just to get up and work out. You already have the clothes on, you have everything ready for you, the sauna's turned on, whatever it is, like you have all these things set to make that the easier option so you use less willpower. And obviously you build on that. So like if I got to get up in the morning to work out because that's the only time, well, that means I have to go to bed earlier. Okay, how do I make going to bed earlier easier? What reward can I add to that? So that I just think that's a really cool concept to think about. Like, how can you make the good choice easier and the bad choice harder? That's a big concept he talks about in Atomic Habits. How do you make the bad habits more painful, good habits more rewarding? And again, like I think there's so much crossover with Christianity. Like, how do you make the bad decisions, the sinful decisions, more painful in your life? A lot of times it means bringing accountability. So, hey, I struggle with something. I'm going to tell someone else I struggle with something. And that means when I fail, I got to tell them. I don't want to have to tell them that. That by itself has added some of that negative reinforcement, like to the habit. Like, I don't want to have to admit that I struggle with this anymore. That's been a big one for me. Like, I don't want that to be a part of my identity. And there's someone I got to tell if I do this. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to be a liar. Anyway, so that willpower fatigue is so powerful. So think about that with positive habits too. How can I make being a Christian easier in my life? What people do I need to be around where it's more normal to be this way? What people do I not need to get away from because they make it easier for me to be a bad person, someone who's running away from God? One of the other things I was going to say is just on that 66-day habit formation, I was like, if 66 wasn't such like a taboo number in Christianity, it'd be cool to just have a 66-day challenge. But that's probably why they do 70-day challenges, because 70 days, you're going to have a new habit. So what about if we do a challenge in Underground at some point? Maybe we'll add it to Lent, 70 days of reading your Bible. Because then 70 days later, guess what? It's going to be a lot easier to read our Bible every day because we did it for 70 days and our brain tells us we need it. That's awesome. What about we can trick our brain, like use our brain in a positive way to automate certain things like that we need in our life?
Yeah, there's going to be tipping points in a challenge like that you'll have to come against where you get to day 15 or day 20 or day 2, and it'll feel like a big energy taker. And so even at day 2, you're just going to try to make it more efficient because, okay, if I'm going to do this 70 days, how can I make it easier for myself? And setting the intention, the goal of 70 days versus just one, is that it gets you to think longer term and shift your environment, shift your accountability. It's like, how can we just make this so easy? Um, so that I can achieve 70 days without using so much willpower and energy every single day. Like, oh, this is exhausting. So the tipping point is, okay, I can either just quit it, but if it's tied to my character, my identity, my core values, which a lot of our exercises are going to just leverage that. Like, who did you say you were? What are your core values? What do you care about? What is a 3-month goal that you want to set out for yourself? Once you know those things, it forces you to make it efficient, to start acting the way you want to act. Because if it was just like, today I'm going to do this thing, and then it's tomorrow, and you have no bigger reason why to do that every single day, you'll immediately go back to every other behavior that's been trained and honed into your environment right away. So there's got to be a community and a bigger reason why behind it all. So the exercises will pull a lot on that.
James, just one more thing, because you brought up such a good point. And I see this all the time with people that want to start working out or living more healthy. And I'm the same way with eating healthy. Normally, when you make those commitments, this is the January 1st syndrome. It's like you make the goal, this is going to be a different year. You have this all out and you come so like hot into that and you do all the things and it's amazing. You had an awesome workout. You feel great. You ate great for a day, super clean. And then day 2 and you're like, I got this, I can do this. But you're not quite as excited as you were the first day. Day 3, now the soreness hits. Now you're craving everything. You forgot why it meant so much to you 3 days ago. Nobody else cares because it's not January 1st anymore. No one's checking in on you on day 3. And you're just like, what am I doing? And then you default into all the easy habits of the past, and then you're done. And so the principle you just brought out really well, and this is so true of like Bible reading and stuff too, is like people come we all know this about ourselves. We have moments of clarity where we're super excited, but it's important, like Amos just said, to make long-term goals and say, how can I make sure I do this for 70 days? This is like the transition from regular athletes to athletes who are endurance athletes. This is, I think, why I am enjoying endurance workouts, because it's teaching the same concepts I want to have for the rest of my life in a Christian way. How do I set long-term goals? So a lot of times in my workouts now, I have to stop myself and say, if I keep working out now, I'll be so sore in 2 days that the rest of my week is going to be terrible. And I'm actually going to end up doing less good workout towards my goals if I work out another half hour today. So I stop because then I won't be too sore so that in 2 days I can do just as hard of a workout. So I'm thinking long term, my goal is much bigger than today. I don't want to just be a beast today. I want to be a beast for months. And as a Christian, I want to have good Christian habits, but I want to read the Bible every day of my life. So I'm not going to make the expectation that I'm going to spend 3 hours in the Word today. Not that that's a bad thing, but don't make that the expectation when you say you're going to read the Bible every day, that you're going to read 15 chapters. And yes, you might have time today to do that, but what about 2 weeks from now when your daughter has a recital and your wife didn't get home yet and you're tired? Are you going to read 15 chapters at 9 o'clock at night? Probably not. And then you're going to abandon your goal because it was too high. So definitely better to set an easy goal long term. You can always build on that after 70 days, but like, hey, yeah, let's get some really simple life change styles because we can build on that. 1% maybe over 7, like let's just change 1% 70 days. Like I want to be at this point. Is that slow incline? Because we're talking about life here. This isn't just us doing the journey now for 2 months and that's it. Like the journey is all about establishing lifelong Christian habits that are a little bit more that way to focus us in on that and prepare us for the challenges ahead.
Yeah. Yeah. We know that influence and change is constant. And we want to create more leadership in your own life and then for what God gives you and your talents and your abilities and your strengths and your responsibilities that he has you in right now. We want you to lean into those and to use those and to multiply your talents. Those are biblical concepts. So are people going to follow you, or are you someone worth following, or are you someone building upon what God's given you? If, let's take this as an example, if you don't have a house and every single day you just look for somewhere to lay your head at night. It's like, oh, well, I'm going to go under the bridge, or I'm going to go into this box, or I'm going to find a bush, or I'm going to find a hotel. Is that someone that you could necessarily follow, or can you build a family? Can you multiply what you have? Not really. Instead, if you need to build a house, okay, we need to pour a foundation, and then we need to build a floor, have a floor plan, and then we need to get the right tools, get the right material, and build a frame, and then put the flooring in and put the roof on. And if you miss some of those parts, it's not going to be complete. So, but it's going to take, maybe a year, maybe 2 years for you to build that, or you can hire some people and recruit people. And so we want to think more intentionally with your life and what God's given you by looking at fulfillment and achievement and follow through.
And enjoy the journey. Otherwise, you're going to give up too. Like you just
Which one of those sounds more enjoyable?
Yeah, and enjoy it. You're building a house. You're learning skills along the way. God is training you. He's honing you. He's making you into something different. So it's not just about the product of I'm going to be a great Christian in 20 years. No, it's about right now. You're walking with the Lord and you're doing one little thing at a time. And this is the season you're in right now. So the journey itself is part of the beauty of what God's doing.
Yes. Okay, so layering some biblical perspective, here are just a few, 5. There's many more, but Proverbs 6:6-8, learn diligence and foresight from the ant. One that I was thinking of was be shrewd like a snake. So you're not just sitting like a sloth. The Bible actually uses a lot of these animals as things to identify with, traits to gain identity from or direction from, which is really cool. So Luke 14:28-30, count the cost before you build. Planning honors God. So there's another spin on the house situation. Am I going to plan to build this mansion when I don't actually have the money or the resources or the skill to accomplish that? No, that'd be silly, and people will laugh at you, and there'll be shame in that. So know what your skill is, and when you have more skill, you can do more. That's exciting. 1 Corinthians 9:24-27, discipline like an athlete for an imperishable crown. There's a reward that's worth getting. The well of eternal life, an imperishable crown, life in heaven, in direct contact with God and love and everyone that we love. Galatians 6:9, perseverance and well-doing brings reward in due time. And then James 1:22, be doers of the word, not hearers only. Don't be lukewarm. Obedience builds strength. You're building upon it. You're building strength. You're being forged in hardship and discipline in a way that someone who has an easy life that's been given everything typically squanders it. So we look for being shaped in that way into character that reflects God's glory. And that's actually in the integration part here, the theology of progress. So just to recap, philosophers, scientists, and saints have all said the same thing. Your habits shape your destination. We're always moving. We're human beings. There is no stopping. We're always going one direction. And those habits can really shape the destination of where we end up, where we're actually taking steps. That's usually the direction that we're going to end up. Aristotle said we are what we repeatedly do. Excellence then is not an act, but a habit. Look at your environment. How you do one thing is how you do everything is a key principle that a lot of leaders follow. How does your car look? Well, that's probably how your bedroom looks. That's probably how your finances look. Benjamin Franklin builds charts to track virtues like diligence, temperance, and humility. Tracking is helpful. It's a fact. Modern research Affirms it, consistent, meaningful goals improve performance, satisfaction, and health. So now let's think a little longer term beyond tracking. What are we tracking for? What's the purpose? Meaningful goals. That's what we are working towards. And that's what causes us to do things we don't want to do to achieve a longer term goal. And actually doing hard things leads to dopamine release. And that feels better than just having a burger every day. That's not good for me. But doing what you need to do to feel like a beast for a few months. A little bit more recap. Neuroscience reveals how habits form. Scripture reveals a big reason why they matter. Our aim isn't self-optimization, it's sanctification. And what does that mean? We don't pursue excellence for ego, but for God's glory. So here's a concept that we really need to focus on. Habits are the spiritual architecture of a life that honors Christ. When we just talk about habits and goals, a lot of the secular world will do this about me. What can I get? What are my goals? I will get satisfaction if I achieve this. But you really find out quickly that habits and success and fulfillment, if there's not people involved that actually give it value, there's always got to be a person involved that gives something value. If there's not people involved, if it's not influencing anyone, it means nothing. It is dust. Even Solomon, who had everything and built everything, he's like, look, people are just going to squander this, or it's not even going to be here in 100 years. So I can't get fulfillment from the thing. I get it from who I'm serving and how I'm glorifying God through that. Love God and love others as an ultimate purpose behind why you're doing these habits. And then when your goals align with God's word, habits then become an act of worship. How wonderful and beautiful is that for our Lord, our King? Your consistency becomes your character. So we got to know who we want to become, what we value, because if I look around, the things that I do the most often, that's who I'm going to become. And if that doesn't align with what I've said for core values and character, something is going to be wrong. I will end up where I am going. That's on you. Your character becomes your testimony. If you're a Christian, you want to be used. You want to be given opportunities for good works and fruitfulness. So let's build that into our daily routine, that we're available and ready to walk into good works and to be a light to others and the salt of the world that does not lose its saltiness, which can happen. Whatever you do, work heartily as for the Lord and not for men. What do you think?
I think that's so good. Man, there's so many nuggets there you could unpack for a whole series of sessions. Each one of those statements is so powerful. I really like the one that says our aim isn't self-optimization and sanctification. There are so many self-help books out there, and you could say in one sense the journey is a self-help journey, but the difference fundamentally between those two things, self-optimization and sanctification, is like, who is it for? Am I doing this just for me, to have a better life and to feel better about myself? Or am I doing this for my Savior? Am I doing this because I can, because He has freed me and I can love others in my life? So in both of those things, you're working to improve your efficiency, to reinforce good habits versus bad habits. But the reason why you're doing it is vastly different. I'm not just doing it to get ahead, make a lot of money, and have a name for myself at the end of the day. I'm doing it because Christ has saved me. He has freed me. He's given me this time, this body, this family, these roles, and I want to use this opportunity to glorify Him and to serve others as He served me, to be a servant of all, not the master of all, not the Lord of all. I want to serve. Like, that's what it's all about. How can I better serve? How can I be more capable to serve my family and to serve my Lord and to respect Him by using this and using this to His glory? You know, so it's just a very different way to think about things. Like, I want to be a vessel. I want to be a vessel that's used by God. Or like Luther said, I want to be a mask of God. I want people, when I walk into a room and the things that I do, I want them to see Jesus. A lot of pastors have, I think it's really cool. Like in the sacristy, that little back room where we put on a robe or we get ready before we come out, the ready room, on the side of the chancel, the front of the church. A lot of pastors will have written on the wall the passage where it says, we would see Jesus. That's when the Greeks came, some Greek men came to the disciples, Nathaniel, I think, Nathaniel and Philip, and said, like, we would see Jesus. Can we see him, please? We're Gentiles, I know, but we just want to see him. And like, that's just a cool phrase. Like, before you walk out to start preaching and start the service, ultimately the purpose is that they see Jesus, not me. That they don't just hear my clever words and my clever thinking and what I've gotten all figured out, but ultimately, if my words don't show them Jesus, I shouldn't even walk out of this room. I think that's just such a good reminder, but not just for pastors, for all of us. Like, before we leave the room, like, why do we go out into the world? Why are we making money? Why did God give us this opportunity to be in the position that I am? So that I and they can see Jesus, we can live in him. That ultimately is what this is all about every single day. And you can do that today, and you can do it 40 years from now as a baby Christian and as a mature Christian.
And it's cool. That's the most natural thing that you'll ever feel, because you were made in God's image. And God didn't just stay in space, in between space and time by himself. He actually created humanity because he's love, and it required relationship and people. And he put that into us. He made us that way, that we are meant to reflect him. We are meant to be in relationship with him and with others, and to take dominion over the world, and to be fruitful and to multiply. And so in all of that design, we're given the formula for fulfillment. The formula for fulfillment is really simple. So we're just encouraging you to be a part of that, to lean into what's natural. It's going to feel natural. It's going to feel good. That's how you were made. And then God will be reflected, because it's how you were made, and you were made in the reflection of him. That's why we're here. And then the parent relationship, the father-child relationship, God to Jesus, and what Jesus was willing to do in order for the reward earned for us. You think, as a parent, man, how fulfilling it is to have children that grow up in the Lord. And the Bible talks about that, how fulfilling it is. Arrows in the quiver, or an olive shoot. It's beautiful to be a part of that. And yeah, you sacrifice all the time, but you wouldn't give it up for anything. Yeah, your children are the most precious thing to you. So we're all parents here. We understand it. And I do my best to encourage people who don't want to have kids to really consider it, and not make it impossible for themselves to have kids, because a lot of the time, the reason that they do not want kids is because they want more cruises, more vacations, and more time to do video games and whatever else. And I have specific examples in my mind of that situation. And it's sad, because that they're not experiencing what you're experiencing. But some people don't find someone, and God has a different purpose for that and a plan for that. That's not what we're talking about. It's when people intentionally decide not to be fruitful and multiply in a marriage, because they want to have self-satisfaction in things that don't last. So that's another exercise we will be going through. That's the last one on the exercise. What has eternal value? Let's just take a look at what habits and things I'm doing that have more lasting value beyond fleeting pleasures.
I'll just add too, there's no quicker way to switch from self-optimization to sanctification than to have a child. Because pretty quickly, they're going to take everything from you. And your whole life is going to be built around their schedule. And so, like, not to make that sound negative, but like, you willingly do that. You willingly do that because so quickly you just see the value in a child and pouring into another life and helping them become what you weren't, or to not go through something that you went through, or just you see in them a reflection of yourself too. So it gives you the most honest picture of who you are, tests your limits, pushes you. And in that way, it does help you become a better person, because it's putting you in the crucible of I can't just think about me. I'm thinking about my spouse. I'm thinking about my child. I'm thinking about my 6 children. How do I care for all of them? I have to become more optimized for them, not just for me. Because for me, I could just leave. But that's not the right thing. And that's not who you want to be. So it forces you into that. It's so good.
Yes, force yourself into situations like that. It's awesome. Jeff, you're gonna add?
I was just gonna say, like, as far as like even going back to secular, if you want to use a secular metric as far as children and stuff like that, I've noticed that a lot of like the most quote unquote successful according to secular metrics, money, wealth, fame, if you look at them as a category, children are also a part of that too. And so I think there's something where we get it flipped sometimes. We're like, oh, I don't want kids because it will limit. And yes, it does. By all means, it does limit as far as time and freedom and flexibility and things. And there's sacrifices that are also made. But I think it's also probably one of the best forcing functions as far as pushing for goals or achieving goals or even having a really impactful why you're doing something. Um, and that beauty of being able to see Christ through my interaction with them, if that makes sense. Like, oh my gosh, I'm willing to do all this just for my little being in my limited capacity. How much more meaningful and how much more impactful is God doing this through the world? How much He cares for all of us.
Yeah, the care principle of that is huge. I think how blessed am I? How joyful, blessed as in like joy, happiness, biblical happiness, to have people that actually care about me every single day, and that I get to have interactions with every single day. Because when you're single, it can be lonely because people just don't care about you that much. Why should they? They got their own things to carry about, or they got their own families to carry about. Unless you have a love in your life, someone who's tied to you, like a rope, like a strand, a wife, no one's gonna care about you that much ever. And then your kids, they see you as this like mini god, some people say. They're they want to make you proud. They want to be seen in your eyes, to be valued by you, and they crave that from you. They're trying to please you. What a blessing that people can care about you that much. And it's only in the confines of family that that happens. Um, so highly recommend it if you're on the fence about having a family.
And I always add the plug for those who are single out there, like find beautiful purpose in that. Like, uh, let's say if you want a relationship, or even if you don't, but like you're still thinking how can I be lovable, and how can I optimize myself to love as Christ has loved me, and to show Jesus to the other people who I get to interact with. And you do have more freedom and you do have more opportunity. So how can I put myself in those opportunities where I can be that unexpected force of goodness and kindness and love, just like Christ was when he walked into a room or walked into a town and he started preaching, teaching, and healing? How can I be that? How can I be that presence? How can I bring that type of joy into the lives of others who maybe are busy and maybe are doing this? And if I am looking for a relationship, how do I become that type of, so if I'm a man, how do I prepare myself to be a leader of a home who's going to lead like Christ? Maybe I don't have those skills yet. Maybe I'm a little too focused on video games or sports or something else, that like I really don't have time for other people in my life. Maybe that's something you got to start working on now before the person comes into your life, instead of them forcing you into that. Because trust me, that's not going to help your relationship, and it's probably going to attract the wrong people too. So
Also not attractive.
yeah, it's not attractive. If you don't have space for someone in your life, you're not going to attract those people around you. Same thing with friendships. This is something I'm wrestling with too. Like, I need to have more social time, but I don't build it into my schedule. So I got to fix that. That's something that I got to do because I'm rushed. I'm running to one thing after another, so I'm not prioritizing that. Amos does a good job of that with his family. Like, as part of their values is that's what they want to be, is open to company and those interactions with people. And I recognize that's something that I got to work on. So anyway, it's just good to think, like, what are you going for and what do you want? If you are a single person wanting a relationship, how can you prepare for that? Don't think you got to wait for the person to come and then you're going to become that man or woman. Do it now. Become that person now. And if you're not looking for a relationship and you just want to grow as an individual Christian, okay, what does that look like in your life? How do you want to impact your community around you? What types of things can you do to have a bigger impact in a Christ-centered way that they can see that that's a huge part of your identity? Okay, maybe you're not ready to do that today, but what about in 2 months? What can you do today to get you ready for that role in 2 months? So it's just powerful ways to set goals of how you can have that kingdom impact and how people can see Jesus in and through you.
Yeah, leadership capital is a big concept that comes to mind, and that this could be for attraction too. Like in a marriage, for example, or in a role in a job, you can build capital by proactively adding skills and fixing things and working on things that are valuable and useful. But in a marriage, if you're forced to do those things, if your wife is forcing you to quit video games, you look like a child in her eyes, and it's so unattractive. But if you, being a man, think, you know what? If I play video games way too much, so I'm going to take this, I'm going to sell it to a kid. And then I'm going to use all the time that I play video games to give my wife a massage or to ask her about her day or to build a new business or to build a shed out back for her to do crafts with my daughter. Like, yeah, that's attractive out of those two options. So you build leadership capital and she starts to, in a sense, orbit around you as the leader and trust you, trust your use of what you are given, your materials, your time, your talents. She trusts you with that. So if you suggest, hey, I'd like for us to think about selling this home so we can move into a different home and do this thing, she's going to be like, okay, like tell me more, because she has trust in you to make big decisions with resources. That's really cool. So just leadership capital is the concept there.
Yeah, that's good.
I don't know if you're going to say something, Jeff.
Just on a side tangential point, I would like to say, as far as like, regardless of where you are in our relationship status, I know that we all have families, we all have children, and we all love them. But whether we're single, we're looking for someone, we have someone, there's all of us, we all have the same relationship, and that relationship is between us and Christ. And so I think that's something to be thankful for. And that even though we sometimes can feel lack of want and desire, like, why haven't I achieved this or why haven't I gotten this? That's something that we can also rest in. Just as an encouragement.
Yeah, it's really good you brought that up. We can make people feel like they need to do things and they lack something and they need to change now versus resting in the relationship that is always there with someone who is love. So thank you for bringing that up, keeping us grounded.
Well, and then just as a side note on that too, that I think that kind of comes back to something I've, as far as a little bit of tactics for the goal setting. So something that I've come across recently, there's an author and a person out there called Dan Sullivan. Don't know if any of you are familiar with him. But one concept that he brought up recently that kind of ties into the princess elimination story that we've gone through privately and separately is he has this 3-day setup in his life that it's essentially it's a performance day, it's a rest day, and then it's like an admin day. And so basically whatever you're doing, you try to have almost like in his perspective, you try to go for 150 rest days throughout the year. Being that, yes, we can pursue goals and we should strive. When it's a performance day where we're on, that's like when we do everything we need to do to achieve our goals. But just as important, we also need to rest and recover and recuperate. And so I think that's something too that, yes, we should strive, we should go for big goals, we should do these great things because of what God's given us all of our gifts. But we should also make sure that we're kind of balanced as far as allowing room and space for us to grow. Have those rest days where we're resting in the Sabbath, we're resting with our family, doing those things to plan and prepare for those futures. And I think that's something where kind of like the Trinity, where you can't have God with all three items. I don't think you can have God without actual. You can't have like these are good goals, having direct action, some rest to recover, make sure bases are covered, and make sure you have everything taken care of that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, good concept to bring up. and very intentional, getting that from a book and implementing that into the process of goal setting. So keep that in mind as we work through the exercises for sure.